Thank you so much for explaining everything CPD. We genuinely appreciate it. We're going to just sort of move on and talk about how you were one of the first paramedics to train through university. What was the terminology you used that they called you?
Paper paramedic.
Paper paramedic, one of the first paper paramedics. And then also went on to be, I guess, one of the earliest advanced paramedics as well.
Yeah, so I wasn't the very first. I remember the cohort, there were some legends in the classroom with me at the time. I will tell you, it's Bolton University. And so, and everybody wanted to do it for a different reason. As I alluded to, mine was around the low acuity, leaving people at home safely. And I knew that my career was advancing towards working in a control room. We called it clinical support hub within my trust, and having that advanced capability and knowledge to sometimes unravel them illnesses or injuries that the frontline paramedic might not be able to interpret. And sometimes just be able to safety net or think more holistically to what is best for that patient at that time. And then a great example of that would be mental health patients, because we know that sometimes these patients can tie ambulance crews up for hours and hours and hours. I wasn't playing the political game of let's free that crew up really quickly. I was playing the support package of let me help that crew with my advanced knowledge of mental health and legislation that will allow them to leave that patient at home safely and not worry all night around what has happened next. Yeah. Because most of your listeners out there will be familiar with that job where you've sat there for 3 or 4 hours and then gone home, and then on the way home thought, but what if, what happens if in the morning I get that, oh, hello Andrew, did you go to that patient last night, or did you see that patient last night before you finished? It's never good news. It's never because they've been to Marks and Spencer's and bought you a box of biscuits and maybe a little bouquet of flowers and dropped it off at the ambulance station for you. It's often because something's gone catastrophically wrong and you are being held responsible for whatever's happened next.
Yeah,
Tumbleweed.
Tumbleweed, that's it, yeah. So going back to when you qualified as a paramedic, or even as a student, because you were one of the first paper paramedics or degree paramedics, and you were saying that your mentors were IHCD paramedics, did you have lots of difficulties with that sort of student and mentor relationship because they maybe thought that you might end up with a better qualification than them or something like that?
So I didn't personally, but I am aware of peers and colleagues who were. And on my course, I had some amazing friends who I'm still friends with now. Phil, David, Stacey, Claire, these were all very young people.
Yeah.
Some of them had just done their A-levels and were academic through and through. Andrew wasn't academic, he'd winged his way through life and would gather the qualifications to secure himself a course on this degree. And I think I even had to do an early access course. And the strangest thing was, to get onto the course, onto the degree, one of the modules on the early access course was information technology and computer programming. Really weird when you think about where I am today. And the course lecturer for that module said, maybe you should rethink and not become a paramedic, you should become a programmer, because I think you'd be really good at this code set. And I was like, nah, I want to be a paramedic. What do you think I'm here for? This is a stepping stone to being on the front line of the NHS. Ironically, go back and reflect about where I should have listened to at that time. But all of my peers and colleagues were very young. And what I don't think helped at that time was people like Sky News was bigging us up with capes and belts and superhero paramedics with degrees are going to come and revolutionise the ambulance service and change the front line of the NHS. I was Andrew, the paramedic, who just happened to have a Bachelor of Science degree that had done a few more weeks training than the 12 weeks IHCD paramedic course, but I never shoved it down the throats of anybody. I literally had more knowledge and skills because I'd spent 3 years full-time at a university. It's pretty obvious that I'm going to have that. And anybody who knew me would know that. And so they would often say, I'm not sure of the answer, but ask Andrew because he might know. And if he doesn't know, he will go away and find it for you. And then he will come and track you down like Sherlock Holmes and give you the right answer. And I think that approach at the start of my career gave me a massive advantage because I never thought I was any better than anybody else working in the ambulance service. And for me, that was a golden little nugget that I was given to at the very start of my career, which was, you will be an amazing paramedic, Andrew. You might not be the most academic at this point, but I can teach you academia. What I can't teach you is common sense, and you've got lots of that. Go away and enjoy your career, aspire to do and be anything you want to be, because you can achieve it.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it goes to show really, because before we started recording, you said a bit about when you were a manager, and even at CPD Me being a manager, you sort of don't have that attitude of, oh, I'm better than everyone else because they're below me or anything like that. And then really that doesn't surprise me that you didn't experience too many difficulties, because you didn't shove it down everyone's throats going, oh, well, I've got a degree. What's your 12-week IHCD qualification? 3 years, mate, 3 years. So, you know, and
Which
that's
is clearly what you do.
No, I haven't even finished the degree yet. But you know, yeah, and when you hear about like people coming into problems, you kind of look at them and go, you kind of did that to yourself. Not all the time, but some people do shove it down people's throats about, oh, to getting a degree. Or what I hate the most is, oh, I got a first in my degree. What did you get? Or like at the moment, I'm doing the paramedic course through Cumbria, and the results come out and everyone goes, oh, what did you get? And I go, oh, I got this. And they go, oh, well, I got this and it's better. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, good for you, mate. But, you know, that doesn't really make you a better clinician on the road, does it? It just means that you're better at academic writing than what I am. I mean, they probably are better on the road as well, but, you know.
I will tell you for free that all of the foundations of my capability to do the work as a paramedic came from them IHCD mentors. And I know throughout my academic career the word IHCD has been frowned upon, but for those fabulous listeners out there who are IHCD paramedics, then you are amazingly a greater part of the ambulance service as anybody else is with a degree, with a master degree. You have been the foundation and an integral part of it for years and years and years. As we advance, I know the chance of you either retiring or getting a degree or diploma is very likely, but please don't forget that you were the foundations.
Well, this is it. Without them, we wouldn't have what we have today.
I wouldn't be sat here with you today.
Oh, same. Absolutely.
Not
like, a lot of my mentors were old school technicians and paramedics, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for them. Like, you know, they made me the paramedic I am today. You know, in terms of my care for people, how I talk to people, all that sort of stuff is down to that level.
You're welcome, Sam. You're welcome.
You're not IHCD, mate.
I distinctly remember one particular job that I actually wrote a reflection on that still sits in my CPD Me portfolio, and I worked with a clinical paramedic tutor called Tony. I shan't say his surname for the purpose of this podcast, but he was responsible for signing me off in my third year. And by the third year, I'd learnt to be academic, so big shout out there to Robin Richardson, who was my course director or course lead at the time, and Andy Swinburne from Welsh Ambulance Service, who biblically gave birth to me because he wrote my course. Now, if you know Andy, you wouldn't want to imagine both of us biblically being born together, but Andy did a fabulous job by creating my course. And I distinctly remember working with Tony on one of my very few last shifts in my third year, where we were going to, unfortunately, a very tragic job of a 13-year-old who unfortunately decided to self-harm himself on a level that I couldn't comprehend as a third-year paramedic student. And Tony showed me some techniques and fundamentals of how to save this 13-year-old's lives that I could not find in a set of guidelines, be that JR Calc, Lancashire Ambulance Service, North West Ambulance Service, or any other guidelines, in fact, anywhere that I could get my hand on. And Tony was an amazing paramedic, he was an amazing paramedic tutor, but what he showed me that day, how to save this child's life, I could not evidence base anywhere. And would anybody else have been as brave to do what Tony did to help save this child's life? Possibly not. Did it save this child's life? Absolutely. Could I write up and find some academia to say that this is what we should do for this practice? Not whatsoever. But Tony is my hero and was an amazing paramedic tutor and was IHCD. Wow. And luckily meeting this child after said incident, there is no doubt that he would have not been here had it not been for that ability for Tony to think outside the box and apply that clinical intervention at that time that wasn't written anywhere in any guidance, whether that's the green book for those IHCD or the blue book or any other book in fact since. It was stepping outside of the guidance.
Are you able to share what that intervention was?
It was using a sedative that was available to us at the time to help reduce the anxiety and pain of this said patient so that we could get bilateral cannulas in, because this patient was significantly unwell because of the mechanism that he'd caused to himself. And I was like, I'm not very comfortable with this because it's not within the guidance. And he was right. It was what we had to do at that time to support saving this child's life.
Wow.
And I think it's not even like the fact that he knew how to do it, or the fact that he had that in his mind. It's the fact that he had the courage to then go and do it, and then say to himself, do you know what, I can justify my actions here. And then went and did it. I think there's quite a lot of times I've been out on the road and I've thought to myself, I'd much rather do it like this, but you feel constricted to the guidelines. And then, I suppose it's just about that courage and almost bravery, I suppose, to then just go, do you know what, I'm a clinician, I can make my own decisions, and when it works out like that, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's always jobs like that I often reflect upon and think, gosh, how have we changed as a practitioner? Because we didn't have as much guidance and support as we have, certainly in this day and age, that we had then.
Yeah.
And I distinctively remember, for those old school staff out there, we'd go to a resuscitation and we would often take all of the kit back, said bag valve mask, said laryngoscope, and just wash them under the tap. Now, I know we reverted to this magic moisturiser that I've used over the years for the purpose of your camera, but it's not that very long ago in the grand scheme of things. I've not been in the ambulance service hundreds of years. In fact, a colleague of mine has just done 35 years, and I commended him for said time. And so, but we would take bag valve mask back to ambulance station with said laryngoscope and just wash them under the hot tap, and then put them back in the bag.
Well, it's like I was at the ambulance station. There was just some downtime, not much was going on. We had a student, and she had an ALS OSCE coming up, and she said to my crewmate, who was her mentor, oh yeah, can you just run me through like a bit of airway stuff and we can go through it? Yeah, sweet. Anyway, she had the laryngoscope down. She was about to intubate the patient, and this team leader walks into the crew room and he went, oh, what are you doing? And it was I don't want to say old school. Oh, I suppose I've said old school now, don't I? So, yeah.
Don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it.
Yeah, it was old school.
Other schools are available.
Yeah. And he said, oh yeah, we used to do it like this. And he literally shoved his fingers down this dummy's throat, and he said, so you feel for the vocal cords there, and then just shove the tube down. Now, I think that was exaggerated what he did. I don't know if they actually did that. But what resonated with me...
I'm just looking at the look on Andrew's face. I'm going to say no.
Yeah. But what resonated with me is that how different it was, and also how much less equipment they probably had.
How big was his fingers? Sorry.
Fairly average size. But yeah, so I don't think that's what he genuinely did in real life, but I don't know, I think he was just making a joke.
I'm pretty damn sure it isn't what he did.
Yeah.
I'd hope it wasn't what he did.
And the golden rule of any practitioner I know, technician or paramedic, is never put your fingers in anybody's mouth. I can tell you some horror stories about things getting trapped where they shouldn't get trapped.
Yeah. Oh. But then he also said, he also then just blew down the tube. He just blew down the tube.
Great start to a fabulous piece of reflection.
Yeah, that's it. He just blew down the tube and said, it's in the right place.
Are you sure this was something like, is this like a retired member of your station that like came wandering in, or?
He was wearing civvies. No, he wasn't really.
He will be retired after this podcast.
Yeah. Can you imagine if I said his name?
Oh.
So, we started the Pocket Clinician business, I suppose, off the back of working for the ambulance service, similar to how you started CPD Me. And we feel very privileged at how much support and also how well it's done. Still a very small business.
Oh, we're very, very much in our early days, yeah.
Yeah, but we still are surprised that, how well we've done and how many we've sold and the amount of support we get on social media and things like that. But we started off these pocketbooks literally in the crew room, asking our mates if they wanted to look through them and if they wanted to buy them. And then we went on social media, and then we went onto websites and stuff like that. With CPD Me, did you almost do that? Did you have to start small and go, try this bit of software or try this book, and then it got bigger from there?
So let me tell you the story of how CPD Me started. I've told you the history of where it got the birth of, I don't know, the cataclysmic storm that created it. But when I did the research, I created just a simple form, like you would expect on Google Forms or however that would be, which would be dates, title, information, attaching evidence, and it would just create one single form, one single piece of information. What nobody knows behind the world of CPD Me is for the first 12 months, every one of those single entries I had to collate into a Word document. There was no computer program, there was no technology, there was no app, there was no data storage SQL database. It was a singular form that created a singular entry, that created a single file for a user, that then, if they said, I want a portfolio, I would physically have to put all of those entries in date order into a Word document, put a front page onto it, put an appendice on the back of it, and then email it back by hand. And it would take me on average of about 5 to 6 hours per portfolio.
You must have used to sit there, fingers crossed, like, please don't request, please don't request, please don't request.
Yes, I did. I did. And then people often after that, you must be an amazing developer because you've created an amazing app and now it's got artificial intelligence in it. I have nothing to do with that programming. There's nowhere in my vocabulary. Maybe there would have been had I done that early access course and gone down the programming route.
Yeah.
But I am not a programmer. I do not understand tech and code, certainly as well as my amazing team. And I have got an amazing team of developers in-house that do all of that for me, Alex and Rachel and the team and such. But I initially had to build every CPD portfolio by hand from individual entries. And I had a pretty organised system. It would fill it in and keep it all to one side so that when you requested it, I'd know who you were. But it was a manual process. Now, on average, we get about 15,000 submissions per day from around the world, and I literally mean around the world. So 24 hours, whether it's 4 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it doesn't stop.
That's crazy. Can you imagine if you were still trying to do it in your computer?
You're like poor Aunt Bessie in her kitchen.
I would have you two here now, collating them into a Word document. Yes, it would be absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible.
That's crazy, because it sort of brings me back to not exactly like the same, but with these books sometimes, and you think, we started posting them out, and then we was like, this is too much hard work, and then you work out a system that makes things a hell of a lot faster, and you think, why didn't I do this at the start?
Well, when we first started the books, actually, it was me in my living room printing off the original copies, hand laminating them, cutting them, binding them. Had my kids doing it. They loved me for that. They're only like 3 and 5 at the time. Like,
I think we've got a policy against that.
Yeah. I think they thought it was fun.
Modern slavery.
And then I was like, guys, like, we need a better system. And that's when we took it to a print company and got it done properly and sort of grew it from there.
Because these are amazing quality. So I get to see lots of pocketbooks. I'm really lucky that I get to see lots of CPD opportunities free, and I get to see lots of pocketbooks. And when I first opened this, I was like, that feels really nice. And we like nice feeling things as paramedics, don't we? We're like, that feels thick.
The other thing is that it's going to spend a lot of time in your pocket, not just in your pocket, but in your pocket on an ambulance. It's going to get thrown around. So we just thought, we've seen too many pocketbooks that get ripped, or the corners. Yeah, JR Calc.
Do you remember the old JR Calc ones?
Where the corners just get rubbed off and the binders come out after a few months. So we just thought, let's go for the highest quality paper, the highest quality binders, and those student paramedic ones, they're still going. Well, I've seen ones that are like a year old and they still look pretty much brand new out of the box. So yeah, I think you have to put in a bit of money to get the highest quality, but I think it's worth it.
I think so. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's what...
Don't cut corners.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Exactly.
So Andrew, what are your future ambitions for CPD Me?
So it was to be international, except we hit that in 2015, where we started supplying organisations around the world. And CPD Me inception was always for the individual. It was always to look after the individual subscriber, to take charge of their CPD. And even now, with tens and tens and tens of thousands of users, my customer service ethos is we look after individuals like they are our only customer, because that for me is so important. In 2015, we started supplying corporate organisations because the birth of a modern CPD system wasn't revolutionary. There were already CPD systems existed in 2009. Some of them were okay. Some of them would lose information, so you would submit some CPD to it and then it would just disappear into the ethos of data and never be able to be recalled. And the moment that would happen to you, you would probably never use it again because you'd think, where's that entry that I created on Tuesday? It's now Thursday and that's not there anymore. Even my system of manually putting them together at that time was a safer and more reliable option. And then in 2015, organisations who had CPD systems started to break, in short, and what they were looking for was a solution that is both safe, methodical, and leaves nothing to chance, and allows you to capture your CPD easily on a mobile app. And we were probably the market leader at that point, unintentional. So we would have organisations coming to us like universities who wanted to replace their old Moodle-based system with a platform that had levels of intelligence behind it and would support practitioners to record their CPD. We equally had organisations that weren't health and social care based, people like, I'm sure they won't mind me mentioning, British Airways and such, who equally came to us and said, you have a CPD solution that we would like to adopt for parts of our departments. And I was humbled by this because, back to the basics in the beginning, this was a research project that wasn't designed to be anything other than a research project. Yeah. Now I've got the world's leading airline coming to me and saying, we would like to use your solution to record our CPD. We've since got around 450 corporates using us now, including some royal colleges that have replaced their old or antiquated CPD systems with something modern, advancing, and more importantly, simple and easy to use, because we all know that recording and capturing CPD is not the most exciting bit of our learning journey. And even if I was to put a box of Budweiser and a box of fireworks with every membership package, I probably still couldn't make it really, really exciting. Yeah. But what I can make it is really simple and really quick. And those two things, when it comes to recording your CPD, will be revolutionary in you changing from my shoebox to my CPD Me.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because my first proper job was in the ambulance service at 18 years old, so I've never really known anything else. But my dad, he closed his business and he now works part-time in a college as like an engineer. He just goes around fixing the light bulbs and changing the plugs. And even he talks about CPD that he has to do with fire safety and things like that around the college to keep everyone safe. And I was like, oh, you call it CPD as well? And I didn't realise that CPD is something that everyone uses, not just in healthcare, but everywhere. So actually, CPD Me, yeah, as you say, is a platform not just for healthcare, but for anything where you need to learn something to do your job better.
Yep. We've recently just broken into the law market and the finance market. The finance market I'm all right with because I pretty much understand figures and books and VAT and such. The law market is a whole new ballgame, isn't it? Because these are now lawyers who want to use my system to record their CPD. Well, if I get that wrong, then I'm going to prison and I'm going to get traded for a pot noodle. You might not want to put that in the podcast, but these are the people who prosecute the world that now want to use my system, and they're bound to find a flaw in the system. And I'm the innovative director. As I said to you when you both came here today, I don't spend much time in this office because I'm a disruptor by nature, which is what people pay me the big bucks to do now within their organisations. But I worry a little bit because we have now got some big lawyer organisations using us, and we've equally got financial institutions who are adopting our platform. And that's amazing for me, because at the heart of what we do is make recording CPD simple. And it doesn't matter whether you're a paramedic, whether you're a technician, whether you are a lawyer, or whether you are in the financial or banking industry. It just makes recording it simple.
Yeah, no, 100%. Do you wish that the order of things were different? So because you started as a paramedic and then you went in to do the master's degree, that's where CPD was born. CPD Me was born, and then it's boomed, and then this is CPD Me. Are you happy with those order of events, or do you wish that it played out a bit differently?
So I'm a great believer in things that happen for a reason, and things just happen organically in life. And we are in control of most of the things. We can influence what we do next. We can decide what we do from today onwards in our own lives. Would I change any of it? Not at all. Not at all. I think I've been very fortunate with CPD Me. You could call it an accidental business if you like. You could call it an accidental venture. And as I said to you, we've run it for quite a long time as a social enterprise to help support individuals to capture and learn and record their learning and development. And that's why the webinars are free for anybody to attend anywhere in the world. And also, certainly for the last 2 years, we've allowed any student across the entire footprint of the UK to use CPD Me without any cost, because it's so important for me that actually my ethos and my mission statement of the reason why CPD Me is here is to allow you to very quickly and simply capture your learning and development, so that you are, number one, a focused, defendable and fit for practice practitioner, but number two, if somebody like the HCPC comes along, or the coroner comes along, or your clinical supervisor at workplace comes along, it shouldn't be stressful to produce your portfolio. Historically, in the ambulance service, you will have listeners, again, listening to this podcast, who will have folders and folders and folders of CPD. And that's fine, because that's the shoebox or the lever arch binder. It just isn't as organised as it could be. Yeah. But historically, in the ambulance service, certainly for the Miller's badge, for those people old enough to remember that, and there, again, will be people out there smiling when I say the word Miller's badge, and it was advocated that you would create a portfolio and that you would show it off. And that might just be things like how the Minuteman would work or operate. And for those who don't know what the Minuteman is, I'll let you Google search that for your little CPD for this afternoon. But you would be able to document on a couple of pieces of paper what the Minuteman was for and how it would be used within a resuscitative scenario. And then you would put that into your CPD portfolio. It was promoted. What we've done since is got very busy, the ambulance service, and we've lost that showing off, that ability to understand a piece of equipment, to demonstrate that clinical practice, to articulate that well within a portfolio, and then present that to your clinical supervisors or your peers or colleagues. But I distinctly remember seeing lots of physical CPD portfolios within NHS ambulance services that certainly not even that long ago were provided by ambulance trusts, and they would say, put everything in here, certificates, PowerPoints, presentations, bulletins and such. We just need to organise it better in this modern day and age.
Yeah, 100%. And I suppose, like, when you say, I remember you saying earlier about, you don't need to print out the collation of the portfolio, and I was thinking, how do you do that then? But I suppose you could probably literally take your phone into the interview or wherever you're going and go, yeah, this is my portfolio, scroll through it. Yeah. Would that be like unprofessional?
So I was really fortunate at one point in my career. I was the clinical lead for avoidable safe conveyance, and before that I was the clinical lead for the urgent care practitioners, which was a collaboration between nurses and paramedics within the ambulance service who would go out and deal with our very low acuity jobs, safely leave them at home. And I distinctly remember interviewing, and for anybody out there who's done NHS interviews, you have scoring sheets and all of that. And one of the things I've always been passionate about is if somebody brings a CPD portfolio to an interview, then please have the decency to open it and at least have a read through. And maybe if you see a qualification in there, then read out that qualification and then ask the candidate why they did that qualification and how that would influence the way that they did their job. Yeah. Back to that conversation we had earlier, which was pointless CPD. Don't just attend a course or a conference because you can, because it looks good in your portfolio. What did you learn from it, and how might that influence or change your job? And so I would often flick through a portfolio and I would ask them a question. And I remember this candidate turning up with an iPad, and I thought, this is going to be interesting. Yeah. And I thought maybe she's just scanned copies of all her CPD on the iPad on set of functionality. And she opened up the PDF of CPD Me.
Oh, no way.
It was really weird. And I said, can I see your portfolio? And she said, yes, it's digital, if you don't mind, because I didn't want to print it off because it changes all the time. And I was like, good answer.
Yeah.
Tick. I thought, this girl's got the job before she's even finished this interview. And she physically passed me her iPad, and I scrolled through this portfolio thinking, this is, number one, a pretty impressive portfolio, because it was about 100 pages, not just of evidence, but a very clear articulation of why she'd done that learning and how that was to influence the way that she would do her job. And what she'd done, more importantly, is she'd put the statements in there pertinent to her taking charge of this role and how she would develop this role and how she'd take charge of it, because it was a brand new role. These were nurses that I was employing to be frontline in the ambulance service, not so much blue lights, not trying to replace paramedics, but looking after the low acuity category jobs that we know makes up the majority of our workload. And I sat back after that interview. I didn't tell her that I was the guy who gave birth to this system and passed to that, and I said that's a very impressive portfolio, and the fact that it is digital is music to my ears, because I do like the idea that it's not damaging the environment by us streaming off reams of A4 print that actually is out of date the moment you've printed it off. And then I said, keep up the good work, and she said, I like to document at least 2 or 3 things per month. And I was like, you've definitely got the job. You've definitely got the job. She has adopted this lifelong learning attitude.
Do you reckon she played it cool? She knew you were you?
She did get the job.
But do you reckon she played it cool? Do you reckon she knew you were you?
She knew afterwards. She didn't know.
She
didn't know. And so she did afterwards, because I remember when I did supervision with her, and she said, you are the guy behind CPD Me, aren't you? And I said, I am, yeah. She went, why didn't you mention anything in the interview? I was like, it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time.
You don't know how people are going to react to that. They're going to go 2 ways. They're going to go, oh, that's cool, oh, nice to meet you. Or they're just going to go silent and not be able to breathe.
Maybe.
Yeah. I'm just not that kind of person. I would never have told her at that point that actually this was me who created the system. I was humbly just appreciative that she'd adopted it and maintained an absolutely amazing record of a CPD.
Yeah, that's it. So that ends the introduction to the episode, doesn't it, man?
Don't make people turn off, come on.
You weren't wrong when you said there was 6 hours.
Yeah. Oh god, like lose listeners.
So Andrew, we're going to start doing this part in the podcast. We've called it 60 Seconds with Sam, because what he's going to do is ask you some quick fire round questions, and it hopefully just gives us and our listeners a bit of an insight into who you are and what you like doing. So you're one of the first people to do it, so yeah, no pressure.
The segment name may change over time, because we're aware 60 Seconds with Sam is terrible.
Yeah, I hope it does change.
And it may not even be 60 seconds either. It might be a little bit longer, depending on answers. Or quicker, who knows. So, Andrew, first question. What's the last book you read?
It was a book by an author called Blair, and it was called Death Interrupted.
Very good. What are you most optimistic about in medicine right now?
The ability for us to change the demand on the current NHS situation, and the ability for us to respond to it appropriately.
What are you most fearful of?
Privatisation and the NHS not being able to provide what it currently does.
If there's something you could go back and do all over again, what would it be?
Nothing. I would do exactly the same things. Maybe I would learn things differently. Maybe I'd take more time for myself. Maybe I'd keep my resilience pot at 75% rather than letting it get down to 20%. But probably nothing.
What person has had the biggest influence on your life today?
Grandson.
That's cute. Who would you want to play you in a movie of your life?
Maybe Sylvester Stallone.
There you go.
That's quite a good fit, to be honest.
I could see that. Yeah. What is one thing you would want more people to know?
How easy it is to record their CPD using CPD Me.
Love that. And then finally, this question is been carried forward and is going to be used in all future episodes from our beloved listener, long-time supporter and previous guest, John. If they made an action figure of you tomorrow, what 2 accessories would you come with?
That's a really good question.
I know.
2 accessories.
He loves that question.
Maybe a gun that would just make somebody disappear, but not die, just disappear, and then maybe come back in another dimension universe.
Okay.
And then maybe a Bible that contained how to do things right as opposed to the way you've done things wrong, and then hand that to people that I thought it would be appropriate to give.
Nice.
Yeah, you'll probably have to give me a couple of those copies.
I've got quite a few, I'll hand them out later.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Excellent, thank you for that. Thank you for taking part in that. We appreciate it.
60 seconds?
I have no idea. I think it might have been actually. Yeah.
Probably around, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably, because it's 1:53 when we started, yeah, it's probably about 6 seconds.
I'm just thinking, I'm thinking more The Rock now to play me as opposed to Sylvester Stallone. Just thinking because of the hairdo, maybe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a few more months in the gym.
Did the people,
for The Rock.
Is it the people's eyebrow or he like raises one eye? Okay, not bad.
Look
Not bad. Look at that.
If only people could see.
Yeah, well, I mean,
they can.
We'll put it out as a clip.
Yeah,
That's it. That's viral. That is.
Yeah.
So, I'll give you a little tip. So I used to sit in some quite high-end meetings within the NHS arena, sometimes maybe even NHS England, quite senior meetings. And my peers and colleagues would know when I was in disbelief of what was being said because I would raise said eyebrow. And they would know that would follow by Andrew's, so let me just ask you a question and then make a comment. So that was my favourite phrase. Let me ask you a question and then make a comment. But I did the eyebrow thing first.
Nice.
There you go.
There you go.
So you spoke a bit about advanced practice earlier on, but what I noticed is that there wasn't much that you spoke about that inspired you to become an advanced practitioner. So what was it that drew you into not just being a paramedic but going into advanced practice?
That's a really good question, and I am going to have to name drop somebody. So I worked with a paramedic called Sam. Actually, he was a clinical paramedic tutor, very much like Tony. And he was a lovable rogue, so much so that I distinctly remember once not following guidelines. Now I know there's going to be people out there who are very senior who are going to go, Andrew, that's not good, not following guidelines. That's not the conformity that we look for within the ambulance service. However, these guidelines were, if you leave someone at home, whatever the reason is, you have to ring this number and then you have to ring the GP, then you have to ring back to this and do that and do this. And it would ultimately turn an incident from what I could turn around in 30 minutes to a protracted hour and a half, purely because I was making my problem other people's problem by just ringing up and saying, hi, my name's Andrew, this is what I've done, this is what I'd like to have done, but I've done it anyway, but I'm letting you know that I've done it just in case that I get done, so that we both get done.
It's almost like the passing the buck situation that we were talking about earlier, isn't it?
Stop making your problem somebody else's problem.
That's it, yeah.
So, my clinical tutor paramedic at the time, advanced paramedic, consultant paramedic, was called Sam. And I remember having a very distinct conversation with Sam, and he said, I need to come and see you at the ambulance station on Monday morning for your 11:11 shift, so I've made you unavailable for the first 2 hours. Now, Sam hadn't been to Marks and Spencer's, and Sam hadn't been to a bouquet of flowers, what he was going to present to me for my outstanding work within the ambulance service. Sam was clearly coming to tell me off. And Sam came with another manager and trapped me in the senior manager's office and said, right, 75 patients we can't account for, Andrew, that you've been to. What have you done with them? And I was like, okay, I can answer this question two ways. I could be quite witty and smart, or I can answer it professionally and politely. And I thought, let's go for the witty and smart. So I said, I've taken them all home, Sam. They all live with me now. And he just looked at me in disbelief and shook his head and went, that's not the answer I'm looking for, Andrew. You are being non-compliant. You are not following the guidelines. You are not ringing the doctor when you are leaving these people at home. You are not ringing Clinical Hub when you are leaving these people at home. What have you done with them? Because we can't measure what you've done with them, apart from you've left a big void in the figures and statistics. Everybody else in sector has played the compliance game, except for you. You are not anything other than a paramedic, so why have you left these people at home? And I went, because it was safe to do so. Why haven't you rang the GP? Because I didn't want to waste any more time on scene. Why haven't you rang Clinical Support Hub? Because they put me on hold for 20 minutes and that just wastes another 20 minutes of time. And anyway, after about 40 minutes of being told off and being told I was non-compliant and all of that, I thought, gosh, maybe if I was an advanced practitioner, maybe if I went and did some more qualifications and I was able and capable of making a self-centred, informed, patient-centric decision, then I wouldn't have to keep ringing all of these grown-ups to support my decision-making. And bear in mind, this was a long time ago. I'm talking early 20s. And so, and my ultimate response was, in fact, Sam said to me, do you have any questions for us before we finish this interview? And I said, it's like a formal interview. Am I getting done? Is this a thing? And he's like, no, but do you have any questions for me? I was like, yes. Have we had any complaints over any of these patients that I've left at home that I haven't followed my guidance and tick boxes and everything else? And he was like, no, actually, you've had 5 thank you letters, but we just haven't told you yet because we wanted to do this interview first. And I was like, okay, well, if you give me them, I'll take them home because they'll all be having tea with me tonight. And he's like, you're still not funny, Andrew. That's not a funny thing to say. And I was like, okay, well, at least it's all positive then, isn't it? There's no negative to it. And I took a lot of things from that conversation, which was how to ask questions right, how to be a good manager, how to support staff to promote excellence, how to ensure that you are leaving people at home safely with the clinical knowledge and guidance. How, more importantly, if you don't know the answer, you should escalate it to a senior clinician or someone else who knows more than you do. And I think that's probably paved my career, certainly within advanced practice and the ambulance service and clinical leads and all of the things that followed, because all of those little life lessons and wittiness that I wanted to say, maybe stop saying or refrain from saying because it wasn't the right thing to say at that time, has probably influenced the way that I've supported lots of staff to become advanced paramedics or senior paramedics or even consultant paramedics. They're a big influencing point. So thank you, Sam. And you know who you are.
There you go, Sam. If you're listening, you can tap yourself on the back.
I actually nickname him Sausage Sam now because every Monday we go to a special pub that serves sausage platters, buy one get one free. So I often go and meet him there. So I do call him Sausage Sam.
There you go, Sausage Sam. So, but that's quite an interesting story though. And to be honest, I think maybe not. The 75 is quite a big number. And I'm sure when the manager said there's been 75 patients that we can't account for, Andrew, you know, I would be sort of.
Oh god, I've had like so many thoughts in my head like. What?
Yeah. Does he think I'm a serial killer?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, those are numbers that you go to prison for, isn't it? Yeah. But like, you know, I think we've all had those types of conversations with managers before, and you think to yourself, but why is this an issue? You know, and and I think that really looking back on it, like you say, how many complaints did I have out of those? How many thank you letters did I have? You know, and
you've got to look at, you know, is what you did safe? Yes. Did it give the patient the right outcome? Yes. So actually, ultimately, what was the problem? You chose to take that responsibility as a registered autonomous practitioner, and that risk paid off.
Yeah.
You know? Risk. Now you've opened a company.
Oh god, I shouldn't have said the word
risk. So as you grow up and become more mature within the ambulance service and you go up that clinical leadership model, and we are so lucky now that we have got very genuine clinical leadership models, and we've often got people in the right places for the right reasons. We are very fortunate, but at that time, in the olden days of the ambulance service, it was frowned upon not to be compliant in such terms. I do believe there's a great scope for autonomy out there in the ambulance service. I do believe most ambulance services now are moving away from some of the triage tools that have been very prescriptive in the way that we have to do things. And I still know there's ambulance services out there that actually still let paramedics make autonomous decisions, and there's a capability for them to escalate if they need to. Again, escalate, don't procrastinate if you're not sure, don't just make it up. But yeah, I was a rebel, I think, at that point, and that's what paved my career to become the clinical lead for avoidable safe conveyance, because I'd written the book of how to do it right before we actually knew ourselves how to do it right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, that's amazing. So then, how does advanced practice compare to now?
Leaps and bounds. I had an amazing conversation with a true advanced practitioner, and I say true advanced practitioner because she is at the very forefront of advanced practitioner and portfolio building within NHS England and such recently, and it has just come on leaps and bounds. I was, I think, just tiptoeing around it at the time, and again, there wasn't that many advanced paramedics in the ambulance service at that point, and the ones that we had, we would push down the critical care line. Advanced practice for me is the ones that actually have got that capability to interpret diagnostic decision making and tools and be holistic and provide that heuristic sort of decision around illnesses and injuries that might not necessarily transport into hospital. I think the ambulance service interpretation of it maybe not be as true as it should have been in the first instance, because I understand that advanced paramedics have got them advanced skills and capabilities, but that might not necessarily be scalpel and ketamine. It could well be that ability to interpret that illness or injury that safely allows us to leave them at home or signpost them somewhere else within the NHS. And when I hear advanced paramedics now who are interpreting chest x-rays and diagnosing infections or pneumothoraces and things, it's just a leap forward and can only get stronger and better. And not just paramedics, because I know there's lots of other advanced practitioners out there. On my course, in fact, I remember at Bolton, there was 2 pharmacists who were becoming advanced practitioners purely because they could then see patients in their practice, so they could go in, have a consultation with them as a pharmacist, then they could prescribe appropriately, which would just help then reduce that unnecessary need on GPs and A&Es, because we know ultimately, if you don't get an appointment with your doctor and we can't get an ambulance, you'll probably just turn up to an A&E unit because you know that somebody there's going to see you quickly.
Yeah, that's it. And you see, like as you say, you see GPs interpreting, paramedics interpreting chest x-rays. You see them in A&E departments, you see them in GP practices, you see them in, everywhere.
We've
palliative care
invaded.
teams,
Yeah.
palliative care teams everywhere. But because advanced practice for paramedics is literally going everywhere at the moment, are paramedics the right people to do that? Is that the right profession to start from, do you think?
I think it depends where you want to go and your career aspirations. I have a friend who's an advanced paramedic who is now the director of a palliative care home, an organisation that supports end-of-life care. Now, if you would have said to me 10 years ago, is a paramedic the right person to be the director of a palliative care organisation, to be helping end-of-life care go right and everything that goes with managing end-of-life care incidents, I would have probably said no to you.
Yeah.
But knowing this practitioner, knowing his skill base, his experiential learning and knowledge that is done both within the ambulance service and outside of the ambulance service, then absolutely right. And would I want someone to direct my end of life better than what David could? Probably not, because I know he'll get it right first time. And that's one thing, anybody out there who's dealt with end of life care, we get one chance to get it right. I think it's an NHS policy call that somewhere, but we get one chance, don't we? And whatever we often say, that end of life care job, people retain and remember for the rest of their careers.
Yeah, 100%. I've been to actually talking about CPD, I've been to talks and things about end of life care, and that's what they say. They say, those words that you use will stick with that relative for the rest of their life. And it's quite powerful when you think of it like that.
So back to your question, are paramedics the right people for advanced practitioners? I think they are part of a bigger scheme. I think paramedics bring their own positives to the arena. We're very holistic, aren't we? We're able to turn our hands to everything. I think someone once said to me, "Jack of all trades, master of none." I was like, well, hang on, actually. But we're very flexible in where we can adapt ourselves in situations. So it doesn't surprise me that David went into that, because actually he was able to adapt himself into that arena. It doesn't surprise me that Claire has worked in primary care and she's done that, and she's a fabulous primary care practitioner. I think for me, it's that ability to be able to turn on and turn off skill sets that's within your capability. So yes, paramedics do make good advanced practitioners, but I think holistically, lots of other people can. So I've got a physio friend who's an advanced practitioner, absolutely amazing, musculoskeletal. You would want to go to him first, because he will signpost you appropriately. In fact, I have been to him.
Oh, there you go, yeah. What's his name? I think I got this back.
I could make him very popular on your podcast.
Yeah.
So where would you like to see the future of advanced practice?
So again, if you'd have asked me this sort of 5-10 years ago, I would have said prescribing, because that's really important. I think holistically fitting into the wider NHS at an appropriate level that will help support the service and service demand, which is GP services, community-based services, working in mental health, working across the full spectrum of everything before and within the front door of the NHS EDs and such. So helping support that massive horizon we have of that rising demand for minor injuries and illnesses that actually doesn't need an emergency ambulance. I think advanced practitioners can play an essential role in that, supporting that ever-growing demand that we have calling 999. And I understand, probably more than anybody does, why the reasons they call 999, because we've always been a very reactive and responsive service. What I've seen within my career, we're looking after the urgent care practitioners and being an advanced paramedic working in the control room and such, is that ever-growing demand is part of maybe a political incidence of us being excellent at emergency and unscheduled care. And I emphasise more of that unscheduled care, because we all know that from our 999 calls, the majority of them calls are not immediately life-threatening. We know that from watching the ambulance programme, don't we?
Yeah.
The majority of them calls are very low acuity: falls, urinary tract infections, cough, colds, query sepsis, query not sepsis. The critical care side of what we do as ambulance practitioners is a very small part of it. I do think advanced paramedics and advanced practitioners within the ambulance service setting, including nurses of course, could play an absolute integral part of reducing some of that unnecessary workload.
No, 100%.
I felt like I was on Sunday morning programme then. What are you going to do next, Andrew, in the NHS?
But it's so true though. But I sometimes feel conflicted in what I'm meant to do for a job. So, or what people see me as an ambulance person. Because when you hear people say, "Oh, I'll only call 999 for an emergency," if my leg's hanging off. But then the realistic point of the fact is that actually lots of people call 999 for lots of low acuity things. And the ambulance service has adapted that by creating advanced paramedics that specialise in these low acuity things. Does that confuse the role of a paramedic?
I don't think so. I think for me, the role of a paramedic is always at that critical care side of ringing 999. I always used to say to young practitioners, when somebody calls 999, it's because for them at that point in time, that was their emergency, for their reason to call help. We can call them all we like on the way to that job, because whatever it says on that MDT could be anything, couldn't it? It's just like going to your cupboard and your husband or your wife or your partner taking all the tins off the shelf and mixing all the labels up and shoving them back on the shelf and go, you think you're having baked beans tonight? You could be having ravioli. What we see on that MDT and when we get there are two often completely different stories. But for that individual who called 999 or 111 or whatever number they called for that help at that time, for them it was a genuine reason. So please don't stand there in front of that Ring doorbell with your arms crossed, making profanities to what a waste of time this is. Because inside that door, we don't know what there's going to be going on. We don't know what the reasons are, what that MDT has said, or what that amazing EMD has said in that control room might be a different story once we get into that house. So I always say to practitioners, be very careful about prejudging and misleading yourself down the path when actual fact for that individual it's an emergency. And as a paramedic or a technician, you are there to deal with it. As an advanced practitioner or an advanced paramedic, you are there to maybe take that to the next level and appropriately signpost them, if appropriate, to somewhere else other than transporting them to ED just because we can.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like that, saving a life is quite subjective. What I think saving a life is might be, resuscitating someone to a ROSC and then they survive for another 20 years. But for another person, it might mean talking them out of a loneliness for the evening. Do you know what I mean?
Or stop overeating unnecessary foods, because health promotion is now part of the package of being a paramedic.
It has. It was on our Instagram story today, wasn't it? Eating healthy. I had a Waitrose salad. Sam had a Burger King.
No, you didn't.
We'll argue about it later.
Yeah, I've got the receipts to prove it.
Yeah. So, as an advanced practitioner, were you called to debrief crews after an incident, or even an incident that you had been also involved in? Because you were the clinical lead, did that then sort of make you feel like you were responsible for debriefing the crews?
Yes. So probably when I was working in the control room, I would know the crews that were sent out to those critical jobs. And we've always got senior paramedics and advanced paramedics out there on cars or responding on ambulances that I would often try and get into that scene, because that on-scene debrief would be exceptionally appropriate, certainly with young members of staff and things. But I often would see those bad jobs coming into the control room, and I would often jump into my car and intercept them, sometimes on scene or sometimes at the hospital afterwards. And that was really, really important, because, again, back to that resilience element, we are not superhuman. I am not Deadpool. I am not a Marvel hero. I am Andrew, the granddad, who happens to have a green uniform and a big yellow jacket and a helmet. So I would go out there and I would use debriefing tools and such, but there were far better practitioners like me out there who would do it better than I would, because they were exposed to more of that than I would. So I have a friend called Sean, I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning, who's also an advanced paramedic. Ironically, this is a really ironic story. In this very building where you are sat now is where I was taught thrombolysis and the interpretation of ECGs to thrombolyse a patient on scene. In this very room you are sat now, Sean, who was an advanced paramedic, who was a clinical paramedic shooter at the time, taught me thrombolysis with a drug called tenecteplase. In this very room we are sat today. Now, I have looked up to Sean my entire career because he's just an amazing paramedic, an amazing advanced paramedic, would be an amazing clinical lead for the ambulance service. In fact, if he was to come back and say I'm a sector manager, I'd be like, that guy is the right person to do it, because he's such a humble professional. And again, I got to spend time with Sean and his wife in New Orleans, and it's just amazing to see him outside of work. Now, Sean wrote a paper in about 2018 that I think was published by the British Paramedic Journal on debriefing tools, the strengths, the weaknesses, and all of the things. I would highly recommend, for a little bit of CPD, for anybody out there, just Google search Sean TNA debriefing tool, and I think I've even got the name of it because I wrote it down for you. You'll be able to find it. It was in the BPJ 2018 and it's called Utilisation of Structured Debriefing, and it was a debrief diamond. Please go and find it. Have a read of it.
We will find that. We'll put it in our bio.
Yeah.
You can put it in your CPD portfolio.
Yeah.
Ta-da! But all thanks to Sean, because he wrote that amazing paper, and that influenced my practice because I changed the way that I debriefed people from that point onwards after I'd read Sean's journal.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah, we'll find the link. We'll put it up in our Instagram bios. So moving on, we wanted to sort of talk about social media and other sort of like virtual platforms like Zoom, things that you often use for CPD Me webinars and other CPD Me sort of like promotion. What are your thoughts on paramedics and healthcare professionals' use of social media these days, and especially sort of in line with governing bodies putting quite stringent rules on the use of social media now?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. Do I post things on social media? I do. Am I very mindful of what I post on social media? I am. Why am I? Only because what we don't recognise is when we post things on social media, if you apply for an interview to go up the ranks of the ambulance service or wherever you're working, there's a good chance somebody will be scrolling your social media channels. I, as the owner operator of CPD Me, have a member of staff here that when you apply for a job will look for you on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, maybe other media sites where you might be making some extracurricular money, and all of those platforms to find whether you are operating and conducting yourself in a respectable and reliable way. Now, I know this happens in NHS trusts, I know this happens in other organisations. I would always say be very mindful of what you put. If you wouldn't stick it on the front of your fridge at home for your mum and dad and family to see, then don't stick it on social media. That would be my golden learning point for you. Now, I appreciate some people put on there that they've been to a bad job, that they've done something today within their workplace. Just be very careful what we're airing. We all go to bad jobs. We all sometimes need that affirmation, that affirmation that we've been to something bad, and we want that approach of, yes, well done, you're doing a great job, but social media might not be the place to put it. Do I think the HCPC should come down heavy on people who do that? I think the HCPC plays a part in it. What I don't think is people should be threatened by the HCPC. I think it should be something that's dealt with locally. I think it should be a peer or a colleague that normally says to you, maybe you shouldn't have posted that on social media. The risk is, once it's been posted, it's probably there forever. And if you delete it really quickly, then I've equally seen your peers and colleagues who screen grab it and then are too quick to come and bring it to the table. Yeah,
exactly. No, that's so true. And you really got to be careful. Even sort of like an off comment on, I know that we sort of scroll through paramedic Facebook groups, and some of the comments on there you think, that's a bit questionable, and I don't think I'd write something.
I think the biggest platform for healthcare professionals on social media is probably Twitter, or X as it's now known, and that's big in the healthcare world, and you see it's quite a prominent, but I think at times quite a toxic environment for the healthcare world. Definitely, I think people often post, go viral, delete on places like that. Yeah.
But with that in mind, do you have any thoughts of our profession being subject to reality TV shows like Ambulance and other things like that? And loads of trusts have been a part of them. Do you have any thoughts on ambulance trusts being on reality TV shows like that?
Yeah, I think for me, allowing people to have a great insight into the ambulance world is a good thing. Back in the day, a long time ago, again the moisturiser is amazing, there was a program called 999 from the BBC that portrayed response from ambulance, police, fire and such, and it was very primitive in its day, and I remember watching some horrific jobs being broadcast and there was lots of grazed out pictures and things. I think we've probably missed a golden opportunity to help educate the public to the reasons why they should call 999 versus when they shouldn't do. But again, back to that comment, to the reasons why people call it, it's because it's their emergency at that point in time of day. What I think programmes like Ambulance do is highlight the variety of incidents that we go to, and sometimes the very sensitive types of natured incidents that we attend. And again, certainly with people who may be younger or inexperienced, sometimes the jobs that they can attend in a 24-hour period that an often member of the public wouldn't see in a lifetime. And I'm very mindful of watching them staff, because they can break very easily if they're not being given the right support or the right support network, or equally they're not filling their resilience pot up outside of that 999 arena these people can be susceptible to mental health issues or stress and anxiety very, very quickly, and equally have to live up to that expectation of that public appearance. Because again, I've investigated incidents where people have been on Instagram or been on the ambulance programme, in fact, as well, where it's not gone to their liking, or there's been challenges around what's been said or what's been done. So is it a good platform to air what the ambulance service does? Yes, I think it is. Is there a missed opportunity for us to help support what the public sees from the ambulance service, or why the ambulance service was designed? Maybe not. I think we could do things a little bit differently. Will it change for the future? Possibly. I do know that there's clinical leads and ambulance bosses that watch them programmes before they're aired and often seek opportunities where we can improve on it, but it makes for good viewing, doesn't it? I think it ranks number one once it pretty much wipes Emmerdale and Coronation Street off the agenda once ambulance is there.
I think people are just like, oh yeah, I wonder what goes on sort of in the ambulance, and what happens when people call 999, and it's just that intrigueness, isn't it?
I think it's good for our profession in the sense of also highlighting and educating how far we've come as a profession as well, from being labelled ambulance drivers to actually, a regulated profession, degree holders and advanced practice and so on and so forth. I think it sort of educates the public a little bit more on that we're not going to just turn up, load you on the back of the ambulance and whisk you off to hospital. We're going to come and we're going to treat you to the best of our ability and refer you onward appropriately.
What I do like about the ambulance programme is it shows the disparity of how many ambulances we don't have. So when it shows the emergencies mapped across a network, it shows actually there is not an unlimited resource, because members of the public, up to not too long ago, thought the ambulance service had hundreds of ambulances lined up outside hospitals just waiting to attend that 999 call.
Yeah.
What that programme for me highlights very clearly is often that critical incident will come in and we have very limited resources to send to it.
Oh yeah, even the other day I had someone say to me, oh yeah, because they have to make sure there's an ambulance that can get anywhere within 5 minutes, right? And I was like, that's the first time I've heard of that. I mean, hopefully half an hour, but and
it's like when you turn up to a patient that's like local to their ambulance station, like, oh, have you just come from up the road? It's like, no, about 40 minutes away. Oh, well, are you not from the one down the road? No, it doesn't work like that, I'm afraid.
No, it's crazy. But no, you're right. I think it does hopefully educate the public. Like you say, everyone's perception of an emergency is theirs, right? So a perfect example is this, right? I'll go home from a day of work and I'll say to my girlfriend, oh yeah, I saw this cute little baby today. Yeah, the mum was worried because it had a bit of a fever. And my girlfriend goes, what, they called an ambulance just because they had a temperature? And I went, yeah, people do that. They get worried about their babies. 6 weeks down the line, our baby has a fever. And my girlfriend says, don't you think we should take her to A&E because she's had a fever for a few days? And I'm like, hang on. That's exactly the same situation as that mum. You said, oh, she's wasting the healthcare's time. You want to take her to A&E for a fever, but that's exactly the same thing. And I don't know, it puts things into perspective that you can watch a TV show and go, oh yeah, I wouldn't call ambulance for that, but actually they would. It's just in their situation, isn't it? So
I can imagine about 6 or 7 years time when your little baby is no longer a little baby and wants a day off school because doesn't feel too well, and dad paramedics making her go to school. Because I distinctly remember my daughter saying, it's the worst thing in the world having a dad as a paramedic. I never get a day off school because you listen to my chest, you don't really care, and you just send me to school anyway.
It's very true.
No, it is true, yeah. It's like the other day.
Even when she's genuinely poorly.
Yeah. It's it. And I mean, speaking of media, the ambulance service definitely gets a lot of attention in the media these days. One thing that is come up quite a lot over recent years is assaults on ambulance crews. They're definitely a lot more sort of televised and in the media. And there's an increase, or so it seems, based on what the media sort of portray on assaults on ambulance crews. Why do you think this is?
Well, good question. I've been at the very forefront of that assault and actually feared for my life on one particular incident that was just the worst night of my entire 999 career. For me, when the chap who was prosecuted who assaulted me, he said, I didn't care whether it was an ambulance man or a paramedic or a policeman who was going to turn up. I had full intent of assaulting whoever turned up with blue lights on the top of their vehicle. And for me, that was quite a shock because the ambulance service are there to help you generally, and that doesn't advocate that you should hit the policeman or the fireman or whoever else comes with blue lights. But I was quite shocked when I was to hear that from the said individual. For me, it's just a society that is changing, and that respect for uniformed or public services is just, I would have never imagined. In fact, yesterday I was at a conference and one of my advanced paramedic colleagues actually turned up with a camera on him, and I just thought, I'd never envisaged ever would I ever see paramedics having to walk around with stab vests and cameras on their uniform attire. It was not something that I ever envisaged would be part of an everyday package. But it is so sad that it doesn't matter whether you are a paramedic, a GP, a nurse, a fireman or a policeman, the risk of being assaulted is a reality now every single day of your shift.
Yeah.
It's awful.
And you mentioned there, sorry, how you were assaulted. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, so I was responding to a individual on this particular case who had almost laid down in the road to get public attention, which I thought was quite a brave thing to do, and then was covered in blood, so it looked like he'd sustained quite a serious injury. And then as I turned up and parked my car, response car appropriately as you would expect to defend traffic, and then this said individual stepped up and just started fighting with me. It was like something from a horror film, I can best describe it as. And I remember distinctly rolling around on the floor. I didn't know whether this guy had a knife or was intending to kill me or whatever, and it just seemed to have gone on for a lifetime, this incident. And it was only stopped because there was an off-duty police officer who'd noticed that I'd parked what you would best understand as it's almost like a defendable parking position. So I parked like you would on a motorway, but not on a motorway. And this traffic policeman on his way to work, off duty, slowed down, thinking that's a very bizarre way that ambulance car's parked across this street. Slowed down really, really slowly, and then saw me rolling around on the floor with someone. Stopped, and then assisted and arrested this chappie.
Oh, wow.
By which point it already caused significant damage to me. I couldn't feel one of my arms. My arm had gone completely numb because I trapped a nerve in my neck, and literally it felt like I was having a stroke. I can't use my arm. This is like really strange.
Oh my God.
And then just continued beyond, even when the police arrived and the other ambulance service, because we continued treating this said individual because we don't know where the blood was coming from. And he was successfully convicted of harming 2 paramedics. So he assaulted another paramedic who turned up to the same incident and caused him to have a broken hand. And
Wow.
it was not a very nice incident.
No.
Not at all. And then I suppose, like, what's worse is being a medical professional, feeling something like numbness down your arm. If you'd been hit in the head, you'd be thinking, is he just caused me to have a bleed on my brain or something like that? That just increases the anxiety of all of your injuries as well. That's awful. So, like, did you have any other injuries? Were you in hospital for a long time or anything like that? Or?
So that night I went to hospital because it started this numbness is not going anymore now. It's like it's getting more pronounced, and again, because of your advanced knowledge, you start thinking, this is the entrapment of the nerve. As he severed the nerve, it's impinged because I can't grip now with my left arm, and the tingling's affecting 2 fingers and not the rest of them. What is actually happening? My colleague, as I said, actually broke his hand that evening at the same time. And the sad thing about all the job is we continued trying to help this guy. Yeah. Even both of us with sustained injuries, and it was just a horrible incident. I've probably gone to lots of jobs where I've been spat at, where I've had cups of tea thrown at me, where I've been pushed out the door, where I've had dogs set on me, and just like I remember distinctly once running down the street with 2 Jack Russells chasing me, and it was like the scene from a comedy. I was just like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? And I thought, if I stop, these dogs are going to bite me. If I keep on running, how long are these dogs going to chase after me for?
Yeah.
And the owner was like, get him, and I was just like, oh, this is just not real.
Oh, so the owner was actually telling the dogs
encouraging the dogs to get
you. These dogs were tiny little dogs, but they were fierce looking things, and I thought, I'm not stopping for, and I'm not Mo Farah, but I thought, I'm stopping for no man running down this street.
Jesus.
Sorry, Tommy. I was just going to say, after you were assaulted on that occasion, did you have a lot of sort of anxiety returning to the workplace and going back to doing what you were doing?
Yeah, because you don't go to work with that expectation of you ended up in A&E that night, or you end up being the assault victim. And we see lots of assaults, don't we, in our roles as paramedics. Certainly when I first started, I would spend most weekends in nightclubs putting fancy bandages on people's heads after being assaulted, glowing on the dance floor with a big yellow jacket on and all of that. and we often don't see ourselves on that side of it. And probably for the first 10 years of my career, I didn't get any assaults, and there was no threatening behaviour towards me. It was a very much respected, the ambulance man's here to help you, and I didn't see anything probably for the first 10 years. Certainly in the latter 10 years of my career, I've seen lots of assaults daily, and not just assaults as I've mentioned, but serious assaults involving knives and weapons and the flicking of blood and bodily fluids into paramedics' face and such. That is just on another level. Will it get worse? Probably. Do we need to change the way that we sentence and manage these people within the judicial system? Absolutely. And I know we've got some amazing acts now to protect emergency workers and such, but sometimes that's just too late by the time we get to that point.
I think the calibre of people, not all the time, but most of the time, who are out to assault emergency workers in general, I don't think they really care whether they're going to go to prison or pay a fine or anything like that. And it's even the same. You have to go to your local supermarket and they're wearing the body cameras because they're subject to it as well. And you don't even know how far people will go. I don't know what the cause is, whether it's just entitlement or a lack of respect for anyone. It's really difficult. But like, we get loads of conflict resolution training, we get PPE, we get stab vests. It's, like you say, it's mad. You never think that an ambulance service would have to issue their staff stab vests. But if you were in a position to make a big change or a decision to try to reduce assaults on ambulance crews, do you have any big ideas up there that could change it?
I think again, supporting that judicial system supports and encourages that you will get a hefty sentence. We will put you to prison. This won't be a tapping the back of your hand and you'll be fine next time. This will be you'll be sentenced or have things taken away from you and such. I was always told as a responder that the moment someone starts to anticipate elements of violence, whether that's verbal, physical aggression, then retract from the scene. And I advocated that certainly throughout my clinical lead days, where I used to say to my staff, if someone starts verbally threatening you, then just leave that scene. Don't sit around. Just put yourself back in the ambulance. Report to control that it's not safe for you to be there. Drive back around the corner if you need to make yourself safe. You are the most important person on that scene. The second most important person on that scene is whoever your colleague is. If that patient is eliciting violence or threatening behaviour, it's not worth you being injured or harmed. Take yourself back to the vehicle. Even leave the kit in the house if you need to. Take yourself back to that vehicle. Report that the scene's not safe. And then remove yourself around the corner if you have to until the police or whoever else comes to support you. I even once do recall I was with the junior member staff and I left the kit bag and I said, we just need to leave this bag here, we're going to go and get some more kit and then come back, and then left and parked around the corner. And my colleague said to me, why have you left the kit bag in the house? And I was like, there's nothing in that kit bag they can harm themselves with, but they are assured that we'll be coming back, we will be going back, but with the police.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. No, I follow those exact sort of same things. As soon as a bit of verbal aggression happens, I mean, unless they're confused or something, but yeah, if they're drunk or whatever, as soon as there's any chance that I think they might assault me, I'm off.
And it's probably important to mention at this stage that we sometimes go to elderly people, don't we, who are suffering acute mental health episodes, that are maybe throwing their Mills and Boons book across the room or their Bella magazine or whatever that might be, or just getting a bit carried away. There's a difference between that and a 23-year-old who might be under the influence of drugs or alcohol versus 92-year-old Doris who's having acute UTI, who's just plucking at butterflies in the air and is edging violence, aggression, assertion, whatever that might be. And realistically, would you call the police to have her handcuffed or tasered or CS gassed? Not realistically. There's a time and a date for all of those things, and most practitioners out there who's got experience and such can apply that information and knowledge appropriately. What I would always say to anybody listening is, don't put yourself at risk, because I don't want to see you in the newspaper. I don't want to see you on the television on BBC or whatever that might be. It's not a great way to see a paramedic who's been injured or harmed. If you are at risk of being injured, to go back to your ambulance. It's a safe place, lock the door, drive around the corner, get control to get the police there, do whatever you need to do to protect you and your colleague.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like danger is something that is like the first thing we learn. And it's the first thing that we think about going into any situation. But
Dr. ABC.
Yeah.
that's it. But when if you've got like a bit of a funky assessor and they go, oh, go on then, what kind of dangers are you looking for? And people always say, oh, I'm looking for cables on the floor. I'm looking for electrical cables hanging down from the ceiling. I'm looking for But what we don't talk about is, is there any chance that I could be assaulted? Is there someone who's going, oh no, please, you walk in first. And they're hiding a knife or a gun behind them or something like that. And, those are the things that we need to be thinking about when we think about danger, the thing that we all know about. So another thing is that it's always the same people getting into conflicts. And I don't think that your example is a good one because it was one-off and it was a horrific situation. But those we've all got those colleagues who always seem to get into fights with patients.
Button pushers.
That's it. There you go. So they're always the same ones. So as individuals, I know as a service and as a sort of as the police, they can reduce chances of us being assaulted. But as individuals, what kind of advice would you give maybe the button pushers and also the non-button pushers as individuals to try to reduce the chance of being assaulted?
Think it, don't say it. Because if you antagonise a situation by your verbal response that might not be politically correct or appropriate at that given point in time, you are just going to simply antagonise a situation that is already heightened.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do is agree, disagree, do whatever you need to do to either remain on that scene, to take control of that situation and appropriately apply your paramedicine as appropriate, or buy yourself some time, get out of that house and then get some help. What you don't want to do is start an argument with someone who's already on level 4, because all you're going to do is push them to level 5, and I'll tell you from experience what comes next.
Yeah.
You get bopped on the end of the nose.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And then you push your panic button, and then it all goes pear-shaped.
Yeah. And it's always, you can see it, can't you? You can see it getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm lucky to never have been in a situation where I feel like my life is in danger. But I think that if the wrong people were there to antagonise a situation, it might have gone to that. Another thing that I struggle with is we've all worked with people that go to a drunk person who's a bit edgy or a bit aggressive, and what I'd prefer to do is, like you say, just agree with them. If they say something a bit about my appearance or something like that, I just go, oh ha ha, laugh it off. The worst thing you're going to do is try to argue back with them. But we've all got those colleagues, like you say, the button pushers, who will fight back and say something. Have you got any advice to diffuse that situation between our crewmate and that potential antagonist or aggressor?
Yeah, so lots of experience of working for that, and had points where you're familiar, if anybody out there will be familiar with this, you attend, you drive, I'm attending this job, you drive next job, swap around, 50-50, however that works. Yeah. And on many occasions, I've listened to my colleagues winding patients up and then stepped in and said, I'll tell you what, if you just want to go and put the heater on by turning the ignition on the front, I'll carry on this consultation. And they've gone, nope, I'm attending. And I've said, you were attending, I'm now attending, you go and put the heater on, you go and sit in the front. And often after the job, they'd be like, I didn't like the way you did that, Andrew. And I was like, the alternative was going to be you're going to get assaulted because all you were doing was winding that patient up. Yeah. Whether that was intentional or non-intentional, but I could see what was going to happen next because he was going from level 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And then before we knew it, you would be assaulted. And then all of a sudden, panic buttons get pressed, CCTV then needs to be pulled from this vehicle's off the road, me and you then have to get interviewed, and all of that can be avoided by you sitting in the front of this ambulance, turning the ignition on so that I can put the heater on in the back, and then we can calm this chappie down, make him nice and warm, maybe even wrap a blanket around him and keep him warm and cosy, and then transport him to a destination that's appropriate. What we don't want to do is continue arguing with him because it's not going to go in our favour.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And even when we go through like airway management training, they always say, if you're really struggling, you've tried a couple of times, change the operator. I suppose it's the same thing. If you've got a patient that doesn't really take too kindly to you, change the operator. Get your crewmate in, see if they can calm them down.
Good cop, like bad cop. We've all done it.
Yeah. So, and you also said about how it affects your mental health, and I think that mental health is quite a hot topic within the ambulance service at the moment. And the HCPC, they recently updated their code of conduct. and they put a larger onus on the registered individual to take more responsibility for their mental resilience or just looking after themselves and things like that. Do you think that's the right way to look at it, or do you think more onus should be put on the employer?
So, twofold again. I think you as an individual should take charge of your own mental health and welfare, and if things are getting too much from you, then speak to somebody, whether that's a friend, a peer, a colleague, a parent, a brother, sister. Don't sit and procrastinate on something that's causing you issues, whether that's work-life balance, whether it's stress, anxiety, whether it's not even work-related and it might be financial, and the reason you're having to do extra shifts is because there's financial pressure. Share it with somebody, because having that problem can be absolutely consuming for you as an individual. If it's a work issue and you are having extra pressure on you because of your clinical capability, or you are taking a university module or a course or a degree or a diploma or a master's degree, and you are really struggling to work-life balance with your university work, then don't leave it to the last minute. Go and speak to someone early on in your career. Do I think it's fair that the HCPC wrote all of these and made it your responsibility? It should be your responsibility. Do I think the employer should recognise quick and early enough that they need to take some action? Maybe so. And I only say that with confidence because when I was looking after my urgent care practitioners, I elicited a supervision policy. And that supervision policy was not only just because this was a brand new role within the ambulance service, encompassing paramedics and nurses responding to low acuity jobs, but it was really important that I was to judge, envisage and support these individuals to whether they were capable and fit for practice. And that wouldn't just be around their clinical capability, it was around their resilience, their mental health, their work-life balance and everything else that came between that. And when I used to sit and have supervision with these practitioners, at the very start, they would often say to me, this feels like I'm going to get into trouble because I'm speaking to the big boss and I feel like you're saying all nice things to me and all of a sudden you're going to get me done for something that I've done wrong. And I was like, that's not how supervision works, this is all about you. And I think other healthcare professionals like physiotherapists, like social workers, like occupational therapists have all got this really right because they've had supervision in their career pathways for a long time. Do I think there's a place for supervision within the ambulance service? Absolutely, because what I can clearly demonstrate from my urgent care practitioners is that it created a fully empowered practitioner who would take charge of their mental health, work-life balance, ensuring that their resilience pot didn't deplete beyond their capability, and more importantly, would ensure that they were centric to what they did next, which was, I don't want a broken member of staff coming to work, and if you are not fit to come to work, then you should probably not be at work.
100%, yeah, and it's all to do with that, like, well, it's not all to do, but part of to do with that, like, burnout process, isn't it? And we recently did a episode on burnout, like a podcast episode, and it highlighted to us that at times we felt burnt out, and we didn't even realise it. So we defined it, didn't we? It was quite an interesting one. But have you ever felt burnt out?
Yes, and sleep played a big part in it. Sleep, work-life balance, wanting to deliver more than I could physically and mentally deliver. And I was the worst because I was the advocate for be kind to yourself, maybe you shouldn't be here, maybe you should report sick. And that was sometimes the complete opposite to what we would expect from an ambulance service manager or a lead, which was, we want you to do as many shifts as you can, bums on seats, whatever that might be. Yeah. But I recognised quite early on within my senior career that having a practitioner who was resilient, but equally could recognise through self-reflection when it was time maybe not to be doing as much as they were doing. And overtime and extra shifts or extra night shifts for extra money would be a great reason why people would do that, and they would literally deplete their capability to respond appropriately. They deplete their capability to manage patients, so microaggressions and things would start to creep in, or becoming hungry, angry, late, tired, all of those things that would make us angry. And most paramedics listening to this will go, I've had problems because I've been hungry, no meal breaks, angry because I've got a late job, late because I'm going to be late at home now, I want to go home, I've got a meal booked at 7:30 and I'm on a 6 finish and it's now at 8 o'clock, or tired purely because we're not kind to ourselves. And sleep deprivation or sleep inabilities through worry, stress, anxiety are a big key role in us depleting our
I used to smash out the overtime, and then it just does that, it just burns you down, wears you out, and I was like, do you know what? it's not worth it. Like, it's just not worth it. And now I balance my overtime by doing like event work elsewhere and bits like that. And it just makes me feel so much more balanced rather than just smashing it out and constantly being on that front line doing that sort of work.
Even 12-hour shifts are a challenge for some people. And I used to do 2 days and 2 nights, and I was tired after the 2 days, let alone 2 nights. And then I've known shifts have 5 night shifts in a row. Gosh, if I'm not in my pyjamas at 8:30 at night, I've failed my life mission that day.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
What do you do to unwind and keep a good baseline of mental health?
So you're going to laugh at this, but I will literally take my grandson on the back or on the front, or now he's old enough to walk for himself, with a flask of coffee or hot chocolate, and I will walk down the river, he'll throw some stones in the river, we'll pretend to go and catch some fish, and then we'll sit underneath a bridge, have a cup of hot chocolate or a fruit shoot or whatever that might be, and just laugh and joke with each other. And as daft as that sounds, I can literally charge my battery up to 100% by a 25 or a 50-minute walk, just walking down to the river, even not with grandson sometimes, just even on my own, flask of coffee, open it up, sit there, just reflect upon the week I've had and think, gosh, there's people this week that I've seen in clinical practice or in business that are significantly less fortunate than I am. I'm just privileged to be sat here under this bridge like a troll with my bag, with my bag and my flask of coffee, and just think, do you know what? There is far worse things happening in the world than what's happening to me right now, and I'm so fortunate that I'm here and I've got this capability and ability to recharge my battery.
That's so nice.
It's ironic. It's ironic that you take your grandson out to unwind, but I leave my daughter with someone else to unwind. So sometimes
I think it's the laughter and the fun, and we were carving pumpkins yesterday.
Awesome!
And it was the funnest hour I have had in so long, and I just thought, that is just an amazing hour. And he didn't want to put his hand in the slimy pumpkin, and he was like, ugh, Grandad, ugh. And I was like, no, we need to scrape all this out. And then we carved his name into the back of the pumpkin, and then we put the candles in last night, and it was just magical. And I just thought, wow, just the smallest of things that actually, for some parents it'd be like, oh gosh, I've got to carve this pumpkin, but we made it so fun. And we sat last night and laughed and chuckled. And even today, we took him back home and took a pumpkin back to his mum and said, "Here, you're not going to be able to. You better buy some batteries for that pumpkin light because he isn't going to turn it off. He wants it on 24 hours a day."
That's so sweet. I like that. Bless. Do you recommend any good CPD activities to support individuals in managing their mental health?
Yes. So, again, podcasts, apps, classes, lessons, whether that's mindfulness. In fact, when we do our Saturday morning symposiums, we have 2 mindfulness breaks in there. We have a 5-minute one and a 10-minute one where we do some stretch yoga, desktop yoga, and mindfulness, where it just literally takes you away from that learning environment. There is some amazing apps out there like Headspace that most NHS trusts will help support you, so you'll get a free license to use it. Just take yourself away from what you do. Nobody wants a busman's holiday. Don't go and spend a day on a fire service to try and think you're going to get away from it, because they just do it same as us but with different tools and different appliances. Go and do something different. Go and take yourself to a yoga class. If you've never been to yoga, I'm just imagining that downward dog now that I'm getting a bit too old for that. But there's things you can go and do that might just push you out your comfort zone, but you might come to enjoy it. And actually, when you ask the majority of technicians or paramedics what do you do outside the ambulance service, they really struggle to answer that question. What do you do to fill your resilience pop back up? What do you do to get yourself away from work and the stress and strains of the NHS in its current form? They'll really struggle to answer that question for you. But there is lots of things out there that often we go, oh no, I'm too old to do that, or definitely not going to do that, my grandma used to do that. Knitting. I've got 2 friends in their early 30s who knit. They take themselves away from the ambulance service and spend a full weekend of knitting. Fabulous.
Love that.
It's funny you say that. I was working in a different ambulance station to my own, so I didn't really know anyone. But I just sort of go in there and try and chat to people and get to know people, sell some pocketbooks. You know what I'm like.
Ever the salesman.
Yeah, he is, honestly.
But there were these 2 young girls, must have been in their 20s, and they were knitting. And I couldn't believe it. And I was like, wow, what are you knitting? And then they say they were doing these little baby things, and they give it off to this baby charity. But if anyone wants anything, then they'll knit it. And even they said, but we love it. It just takes your mind away from everything, and it unwinds you, and that. And they were saying we can make this whole thing like in a week, and I was like, wow. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know why. Well, I do know why it made me think of it. But yeah, so take up knitting, people.
I struggle to sew a button on my coat. In fact, I recently took my coat to my auntie's because, well, number one, I'll tell you, I didn't have any sewing kit in my house, and so I normally pinch them from hotels, the little sewing kits you get, and hope I never have to use it. But I actually took a coat to my auntie and said, "Please, will you sew this button on?" And she's like, "Hang on a second, you're an advanced paramedic. You do all sorts of advanced things to people to save their lives, and you can't sew a button on." I was like, "Okay. Don't hold it against me. I have got other people I can. I have got yes. I teach it. I have got other people I can take this coat to sew this button on for me, who will not interrogate me as much as you are. But please, will you just sew it back on?" Anyway, she did.
With sort of CPD activities and that in mind, do you think learning more about your own mental well-being will become a part of a balanced CPD portfolio in the future?
Absolutely. And my plan for next year is to have sessions specifically around wellness, being kind to yourself, and taking yourself away from your everyday stresses and strains. And that might not necessarily be your job. It can be other influencing factors that you have limited control over.
Nice.
No, good. Yeah, no, that would be good to see, because like you see, so CPD is so like clinical, and what can I do to be a better clinician, and like in the clinical stuff, and how can I manage an incident better, or how can I cannulate people more successfully, or something like that. But actually looking after yourself is CPD in itself.
We tested it last week. We had Professor Mike Farquhar, who did a talk on sleep within healthcare services and systems, and that was my testing road to go. Actually, this is not about learning how to do a finger thoracostomy or an advanced area management technique or leaving somebody at home safely. This is around you as a practitioner and how this might affect you, or how that sleep deprivation is going to influence your practice and change the way that you don't just manage your job well, but also manage your resilience part well.
Yeah.
So next year I think we've got about 12 programs lined up covering every element of mental health, well-being, self-reflection, and the capability for you to go, yep, it's time for me to just have a stop, pause, and rethink about what I need to do next to help myself.
I think that's so good. It's so important to put that focus back onto, having that balanced lifestyle and being able to be a good clinician by having that baseline mental health. And it's so good that we're putting more of a focus on that, and we're removing all those sort of taboos that were there previously about mental health and bits like that. Thank you, Andrew. We're pretty much done almost. We've got one last question to sort of finish on, and then a few questions from our listeners. So we'll just go with our last question, which was, looking at your whole career so far, what is it that makes you most proud of yourself?
I think my journey. I think from starting my career as a volunteer first responder at the very start, back in late 90s I think it was, right the way through to working in fact I worked as a CFR, and then I went and worked in the CFR office looking after CFRs, and then I got my place at university, and then qualified as paramedic, went for senior paramedic, advanced paramedic, clinical lead working for 4 ambulance trusts, so North West, North East, East Midlands and Yorkshire. And as I look back through the journey, just that amazing opportunity I've had to meet lots of fabulous characters from lots of fabulous backgrounds, not just in the ambulance service, but patients as well. Yeah. And that trust element that's come with it, because I've delivered babies and been there with the most magical of moments with families bringing new life in, and I've equally been there and held the hands of families with candles and Matt Munro playing in the background as we've said goodbye to loved ones, and all of those privileged moments in between that most people who probably won't listen to this podcast, who have jobs where they go to work, do 9 to 5, working in office, will never have had that opportunity. And when I look back and think, yes, there's been some challenging times, or there's been times where my mental health has been torn or frayed around the edges, but actually when I used to come home, I used to often think, wow, what an amazing day, and I've touched and influenced so many people's lives and just had that ability to be trusted. And for me as a paramedic sat here with you today, that capability that I will tell you something that is evidence-based and true to the fact that we are. If I'm going to tell you that you're really poorly and I need to take you to hospital because the risk is you're going to die, then I'm not basing that upon any other fact than if I leave you at home, the probability is you won't wake up in the morning. The equal ability to go and walk in a complete stranger's house and go, ambulance, walk into a stranger's house who then goes, I'm sorry love, this is not not the ambulance house, the one you're looking for is next door, as they sat there having the tea. And so just the ability to knock and walk in a complete stranger's house and not have a tin of beans thrown at you is just a trusted element. And And I've never taken advantage of that trust. And even now, when I'm walking around in civilian clothes, I'll still be recognised in my local community and go, oh, you're a paramedic, I think you delivered my son, who's now 15, looking like, oh gosh, this is embarrassing.
Wow.
Hiya. And equally, while I'm stood in Costa or other coffee shops, get a tap on the shoulder to say, I'll buy you that cup of coffee because you were there when my grandma died and we can't thank you. And equally, I remember everything you said to me when she passed away. And for me, that is such a privileged position for me to sit as a paramedic, wherever I'm in the food chain, senior, advanced, clinical lead, advanced and such. Just that ability to have that influence on people's lives and to be there, more importantly, when they needed that call of help.
No, 100%. And you've had quite an admirable career, really, to the point where even one of the things that you've achieved might be for a lot of people, it might be their greatest moment in their life. So yeah, like hats off. It's pretty cool to be able to sit here and have a chat with you. But yeah, thanks so much for giving up your time. We're really, really appreciative. And we're gonna, when we put on our Instagram and our Facebook that we had yourself coming on, we had a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people were quite excited to listen, and we got quite a few questions from our listeners. We've just picked a few, otherwise we'd be here for another 18 hours of your time.
I thought you both moved in at one point.
Yeah, so did I. Well, it's when Sam put his pyjamas on, that was the worst part.
Or a CPD Me dressing gown.
I'd love one of them every time. I'm like, carry on.
That face was a bit, okay then. Anyway, so you have answered a couple of these, but it's good to sort of sum up and go over them again for everyone else anyway. So the first question is, I'm not a registrant. When is a good time in my career to start my CPD portfolio?
Now. The moment you've listened to this podcast, go to the App Store, download the CPD app. Just type the words CPD Me or CPD Portfolio. If it's not ranking number 1, please contact me personally.
There you go. I hope that sorts out your question. Second question is, I've just started collating my CPD portfolio. How far back should I include CPD? Is a paediatric emergencies conference I attended 5 years ago still relevant?
Yes and no. So if you are HCPC registered, then they're only going to be interested to look at what you've done in the last 2 years to influence your practice. That said, it's not too much to say that actually that might have created a very unique learning point in your career that you can build upon at some point in the future, and you can reflect upon that conference 5 years ago and then say how you've advanced as a practitioner based upon your paediatric skills and knowledge. You equally might attend another conference where you revisit something that you learned 5 years ago that you can then bring that conference evidence right back up to date purely by expanding on what you learned 5 years ago and how that's influenced and changed, because we all know that practice changes and guidelines change. So backdate as much as you think relevant. CPD Me is really easy to log things. It takes around 2 minutes to log a CPD piece of evidence and upload a certificate or a bulletin. You log as much as you need to. Turn that shoebox digitally if you need to, because at some point things might be able to be revisited and brought up to date.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think like the way you say something you did 5 years ago can be reflected upon again almost, or like you say, the big thing that changed my career or the way that I did things, that can still be reflected upon now, right?
Yeah,
so yeah, that's
absolutely.
pretty cool.
And our third and last question is, how much reflection do I need to write about a chat with my mentor for it to be good enough for CPD?
So chat with mentors are amazing because it almost gives you that blank slate to discuss all the goods and the bads and the uglies around practice, a good whinge around the ambulance service, demand on the ambulance service, demand on the NHS. You can reflect upon any conversation and elicit as much information as you want in your personal reflection. I would always say reflective practice is personal to you. Reflective practice is not something you want to show off, because it might be a job where you got emotionally upset or you got really worried or you did something that actually didn't go too well, but it's centric to what you as a practitioner felt at that point in time. And we can reflect upon reflections, because I have a reflection of a piece of work that I did probably about 15 years ago where I miscounted morphine. I was in the back of the ambulance, 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning at my local ambulance station, and my colleague, while I was making all the safety checks around controlled drugs, she said, "Do you want to brew, Andrew, and some crumpets?" Well, of course the answer's going to be yes, isn't it? I don't know a single ambulance person in my life what would turn down a brew and 2 crumpets on a Sunday morning. Yes. But with that distraction, came my misdocumentation, and I put the diazimals, which is the drug that we use to stop people from seizuring, in the morphine box, and I put the morphine number in the diazimals box.
Oh, no, yeah.
And then continued to do the same thing for 3 days because I was on that vehicle for 3 days. So I looked at Sunday, and then Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and didn't use any of those drugs in them 3 days, so continued writing the number in those columns. A very common mistake. I know that. I've been a clinical lead and an investigator and investigated that same error 32 times. However, because I recorded that reflection on CPD Me, for every investigation that I reflected upon, I brought that reflection of mine up to date. So even though that occurred in 2004, it still appears in my portfolio from 2022, because that was the last time I supported a practitioner who made exactly that same mistake.
Right. There you go. Yeah, so even sort of like supporting colleagues that who have made a similar mistake to what you've done, that's a form of CPD as well. It's crazy, isn't it? Really, anything is CPD.
Anything that will create a learning point within your journey. Yeah. Anything that might influence or support you, or even that doesn't change your practice. You can actually articulate that you attended a conference, didn't learn anything new, but you revisited some information that you might have just pushed to the back of your mindset that you learnt 20 years ago, and it was a great day out, and it was great food.
Exactly. Yeah. But to end, Andrew, honestly, we cannot thank you enough for your time.
It's been a pleasure.
What we planned was going to be an hour, maybe 2, but we had such a great conversation. And
I think you've smashed our podcast record.
Yeah.
You've beaten John, and he's going to be most upset because he can talk. So when I next see John, I'll probably drop him a message after this, and he will be like, "Right, well, you got to get me back on. That's it. Like, I'm coming back on." But
that was brilliant, and I hope everyone listening got something out of that. And just the final word on CPD: where can we find it, and where can we get it?
So I'm going to give you a little special place on your website where you can put a magic little discount code. So any of your listeners who doesn't use CPD Me can go to your website, find this magic discount code, and get 50% off their membership, which will literally give it them half price. Their membership is only £24.99 per year, and for that you get an amazing CPD system, the amazing support of my team if you need to ring them or have a Teams message with them, but you also get 150 live events next year, so live webinars and access to over 600 recordings in the CPD Hub. But I'll put a 50% discount code on your website so your listeners can come and find it.
Well, amazing. There you go, guys. Head straight over to pocketclinician.co.uk and you can get that exclusive discount. Thank you very much for listening, and catch you again soon.
Sadly, that is the end of this episode. We really hope you learned something while staying entertained. To claim the 50% off your first year with CPD Me, as Andrew was talking about, head to our website www.pocketclinician.co.uk and you'll see a link that you can click on the homepage. Follow that and use discount code BullhornsCPD and that will take 50% off. But coming up, our next guest on our next episode is Dr. Fiona Moore. She's the former CEO of London Ambulance Service and former CEO and Medical Director of South East Coast Ambulance Service. You all would have heard of her name. But until then, enjoy the bitter weather and have a lovely time.